tipping things off, Anthony, looking at the East region, the first of two on Thursday in that region. Number 2 seed Alabama taking on 6-seeded BYU. Current lines for this game, point spread, Alabama minus 5.5 juiced in BYU's direction. You could also find, conversely, an Alabama minus 5 juiced and a little less vig, minus 0.5 on the Cougars. The total in this game could potentially, depending on where it closes, be the highest total in tournament history going back over the last 30 years. So looking at BYU, knocking off Wisconsin, covering that game. I was on the losing end of the stick, taking VCU against the Cougars in the first round. Alabama, meanwhile, failing to cover against Robert Morris. Grant Nelson takes off the Superman cape, I guess puts on the Superman cape, plays in the second half. They don't cover that game, but they advance, and they take care of your St. Mary's Gales in the second round, the round of 32. So how are you looking to approach the first of 8 Sweet 16 matchups? No bet for me here, so I'm going to let you have the floor.
Yeah, I'm going to be on the Cougars. The first round game between BYU and VCU was so tough for me because when I looked at my bracket / betting angles here, I wanted to take whichever of those teams got there to make a little run to beat Wisconsin. And so did get my if you can't beat them, join them. So I couldn't beat BYU in round 1. So I joined them in round 2. They got over the edge against Wisconsin. I think the one concern you could have in terms of just advantages and schematics and stuff, BYU did get to play at elevation for their first 2 rounds. They will not get that flying across the country to Newark for this game, playing at sea level over in Jersey. So that's one angle of this. But ultimately, nothing that Alabama's done in the first 2 games has really changed my perception of them, that they're just a little bit of a flawed team. Their defensive metrics, no turnovers forced, they foul a ton, they give up open looks from 3. There's just not that much to like. And I think it said more about St. Mary's kind of, shitting their pants at the rim and missing all their open threes in that game. If you go look at like just how many extra shots St. Mary's got in that game and certain other metrics like turnovers, Mary's was dominating everything but the putting the ball in the hoop part. And so I think that I'm not really buying any Alabama upgrades on this, and I think BYU is better than Mary's. I took 5.5 with Mary's. I'm going to take 5.5 with BYU as well.
Since the beginning of February, BYU, believe it or not, ranked 4th on Torvik behind Duke, Houston, and Florida. So I'm with Anthony, at least in the sense that BYU maybe still not getting enough market respect despite the fact that they knocked off Wisconsin and VCU in their first 2 meetings. And like you said, situationally had the advantage because of altitude, being used to that. And also VCU 3 games in 3 days in the A10 tournament, quick turnaround. Wisconsin was playing their 6th game in a week and a half. And I know they came back in the second half, nearly sent the game to overtime. That was almost a one shining moment-ish with John Tanji missing or airballing that shot on the baseline to potentially send that game into overtime. But the refs kind of helped. Needless to say, Wisconsin, I don't think we need to go much more into it, but there were some terrible calls down the stretch in that game, including the flagrant 2 ejection that gave Wisconsin a couple more free throws. Was that, to you, the worst officiated game of the tournament? To me, it was still UC San Diego, Michigan, but where do you put the BYU-Wisconsin officiating?
So I was kind of in and out for a lot of that second half. I had to go to a charity event, and so I was trying to be present.
There's
at the
ego.
event. Right, somewhat. But it's a close family friend for a foundation, so they do it every year that Saturday, and I'm always like, all right, I'll be there, but I'm gonna have to you need screens. I got to be able to check in. Don't be mad at me if I'm on my phone more than I should be.
I respect
and so
that.
I'm trying to find the best ways to get in and out, and so I saw most of the little Wisconsin late charge, but I wasn't locked into that game enough to be like, were the refs hosing him? I mean, certainly the flagrant 2 was obnoxious, but. Yeah, tough whistles. I'd have to think. I mean, I thought Johnny's got a tough whistle. The way they fouled out Kadari Richmond there late was bad. And, maybe it's only 1 or 2 calls, but I thought they were pretty consequential. That was tough. UCSD, I know there was a lot of controversy early second half where it felt like a lot of loose ball calls were going Michigan's way. So
and
yeah,
Amari
there's certainly
Burnett
about there.
Stepped out of bounds on a 3-pointer for crying out loud. They missed his foot being out of bounds.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have such a magnifying glass on this stuff, and it's really hard because at the same time, I don't want commercial review basketball where everything in the last 2 minutes gets reviewed. And so I'm just like, I think we have to try to find the medium. And I don't know if there's a single game where I'm like, oh, that outcome swung solely because of the refs. We haven't had that many close late finishes. Maybe that's part of it. And especially all the obnoxious discourse about like, did Queen travel or not? I think it's all crazy. So
for my money, either A, I don't think he traveled, or B, I don't think you can call it in the moment just to get a quick take in there.
They
and
never
if you
call
go
that.
back, kind of like Maryland deserved it. 5 years ago, maybe it was 6 years ago at this point, 2019 tournament, LSU beats Maryland near buzzer beater, essentially a buzzer beater, Tremont Waters. If you look at the steps, Waters took the exact same amount of steps. Right.
Yep. I remember that game.
If you're going to call one a travel, LSU shouldn't have beaten that really good Maryland team in the round of 32, a team that I loved. And I don't love many things Mark Turgeon does or did as a coach, but I loved Anthony Cowan, Bruno Fernando, and Jalen Smith.
That was 2019, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that was still my favorite tournament ever that year. And that was one of the games. If you think about all of the insanity that happened in that tournament, I think there were like 4 or 5 overtime games from the Sweet 16 on. Virginia, all of the drama, every game coming down to the last 30 seconds in overtime. First of all, I love Tony Bennett, so my bracket was good that year. Certainly all counts, but
they got so fortunate.
Zion Duke with the UCF and the VTech and the Michigan State game, all decided by one possession. You remember back to Purdue and Tennessee, the Carson Edwards game against Virginia. Like there's so many memorable games from that tournament for me. Texas Tech's run to the championship. So yeah, that's number one for me of my favorite tournaments. And this tournament sets up in a similar way where there's a lot of chalk, a lot of the top seeds advanced. Hopefully we can get, similar drama.
2019 was a good year for me. I had 3 of the 4 Final Four teams in my bracket, so I won my pool. I made a good amount of money, but I will forever be haunted by Ryan Klein going off like Steph Curry against Tennessee down the stretch of that game. I had Tennessee to win it all that year. And then in the championship, I had a Texas Tech future and DeAndre Hunter's 3. Granted, Texas Tech, it's not like they were up the entire game. Like Jarrett Culver took over the final 8+ minutes of that one to give the Red Raiders the lead in the final minute or so. But if Hunter doesn't hit that 3, I'm sitting on a really nice profit on an 100-1 ticket. And then what do you know?
Kyle Guy, too, in the semifinals.
Yeah.
With getting fouled on the 3 in the corner.
So you may be a Tony Bennett guy, loving enjoying your bottom, below average, Division I slowest tempo across college basketball. Now Ben McCollum may take the reins of that at Iowa. But let's be honest, Virginia got fortunate that year.
Oh, without question. But it was also written in the stars. After they lost to UMBC, it was the perfect storybook. And DeAndre Hunter, who got hurt in 2018 and couldn't play in the tournament, which contributed to them getting blown off the court by UMBC, and him hitting the game tying shot and them going on to win in overtime, just incredible. And also, probably the greatest cover of my life was Virginia minus 4.5 in the Elite Eight against Purdue. I think we joked about this a couple weeks ago.
I was on that too.
Purdue gives up the offensive rebound, and Diakite hits the tying shot. They go to overtime, and then Edwards steps out of bounds on the inbounds pass. They foul down 3 with 1 second left, and Virginia hits them to cover and win by 5. I mean, I was at the bar. It was in college at the time. It was great. It was a great time to be alive.